Ave Maria.
Elizabeth's time was fulfilled, that she should be delivered, and she brought forth a son. And her neighbors and kinfolk heard that the Lord had magnified his mercy towards her, and they rejoiced with her. And it came to pass on the 8th day that they came to circumcise the child, and they were going to call him by his father's name, Zechariah. And his mother answered and said, No, not so, but he shall be called John. And they said to her, There is none of your kindred that is called by this name. And they kept inquiring by signs of his father what he would have him called. And asking for a writing tablet, he wrote the words, John is his name. And they all marveled. And immediately his mouth was opened, and his tongue was loosed, and he began to speak, blessing God. And fear came on all their neighbors, and all these things were spoken abroad in all the hill country of Judea. And all who heard them laid them up in their heart, saying, What then will this child be? For the hand of the Lord was with him. And Zechariah his father was filled with the Holy Spirit, and prophesied, saying, Blessed be the Lord, the God of Israel, because he has visited and wrought redemption for his people. And so today the church celebrates the birthday of Saint John the Baptist. He is the only saint, apart from our Blessed Lady, whose birthday into this world is celebrated. And the reason is because in both cases, they were born without sin. In the case of our Blessed Lady, she was conceived without sin. But in the case of John, he was freed from original sin in his mother's womb. And this occurred when our Blessed Lady visited Zechariah and Zechariah's house. And we're told Elizabeth, hearing the voice of the Virgin, was filled with the Holy Spirit. And being filled with the Holy Spirit, the child in her womb leapt for joy. And at that moment, he was freed from the contagion of original sin, being full of grace. And so the church celebrates his birthday, his birth into this world. And we heard, as St. Luke records it, that Elizabeth's time was fulfilled. The time had come, she was to give birth. And up until this moment, it would seem that no one knew about it. In fact, we're told that she kept herself in private for 5 months. And so the time now having arrived, she gives birth, and her neighbors and her kinsfolk, they come to rejoice with her. And on the 8th day, the child is to be circumcised. This was an important part of Jewish life, because until circumcision, one was not considered to be a Jew. The circumcision engrafted the child into the people of Israel. It was the establishment of the covenant. And likewise for us, baptism establishes us in a covenant with God, with Christ to be exact. And all that God wishes to do for his people can now be done according to the covenant. In the case of the Jews, circumcision; in case of us, baptism. Of course, once Christ had come, and once he had suffered and established his church, circumcision is no longer necessary. And this was part of the great struggle in the early church, where the Jews insisted the Gentiles had to be circumcised. And it was decided definitively at the Council of Jerusalem that not so. Baptism suffices. And so on the 8th day they came, and with the circumcision they were going to name the child, just as we name our children at baptism. In fact, in the older days, Catholics didn't celebrate birthdays. Rather, we celebrated our feast days. And the feast day was essentially the day in which we chose a saint to be our patron. This is a reason, certainly here, where so many people have this, the same name on the same day. So today being the Feast of St. John, there are many who are called John, and because that is their feast day. And this was a common practice, but unfortunately no longer the case. And so they're going to name him John because the tradition was that you take the name of an ancestor, and the family object. He said, no one in your family has this name. And to make certain, they asked the father, who is deaf and dumb. We know this because they inquired of him using signs. If he could hear, they would have asked him. Evidently, he couldn't hear, and therefore they had to make signs. And then he wrote the words, his name is John. And so we have then the agreement between the parents, and they had not communicated about it. How did Elizabeth know? Well, don't forget, she was filled with the Holy Spirit, and she prophesied by the Holy Spirit. And so the people marveled because they knew there wasn't this communication. And we're told immediately his mouth is opened, his tongue is loose, he begins to speak. And so now there's this definite miracle that occurs and confirms what had happened. And so fear falls on everyone, and they wonder, what is the destiny of this child? How is it going to affect us? But Zechariah, we're told, is now filled with the Holy Spirit. He no longer is unbelieving, but he's full of faith. And more than that, he begins his great hymn, the Benedictus, which the church recites at morning prayer every day of the week. And so we also, with John, can say, blessed be the Lord, the God of Israel, because he has visited his people. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Santa